Christine Coral here. Welcome to Quieting Your Mind at Night, where we're going to cover a lot of the things that you need to know to get a good night's sleep. A lot of things that I've taught for many years in my cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia classes that I've done at various places. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you some of the basic things that some of which you may have heard. You know, a lot of you, if you have insomnia and you've gone to see your family doctor about it, will have received lots of tips on getting a good night's sleep. We're going to go a little bit deeper than that with some of all the strategies that you can use, and I'll certainly have some recommendations for books and more information if you want to delve a little bit deeper. Or, you know, a lot of this is pretty self-contained, so, you know, maybe one or two of the strategies I'm going to talk about today might be all you need to get a good night's sleep. I certainly have to do all of them. I was born a terrible sleeper, and there seem to be two types of people: those of us who always had trouble sleeping from the day we were born, and those of us who develop sleep problems later in life, during a bout of stress, or when we have a health concern, or we have maybe some pain that interferes with our sleep, or going through menopause. A lot of women have trouble falling asleep, so there's all kinds of things that can disrupt our sleep. And of course, when we have kids, they sure like to keep us up as well. And what we're going to do today is cover a lot of those different strategies. One of the biggest things, though, and I'm sure you know, is often we try too hard to get a good night's sleep, and that can keep us up all night. So a lot of these strategies are counterintuitive. You may not have thought of using them before. Probably you're going to see a lot of the habits that keep us up all night might be some of your habits, and you can make some changes so that you do start to sleep better. And I really think they should almost teach this in school, because it's sleep problems are just epidemic. You know, most of us aren't getting enough sleep, and even if we're, you know, a little bit chronically sleep deprived, like we're getting a half an hour or an hour too little sleep every night, that sleep debt adds up and takes a toll on our mood and our health and our happiness. So I'm hoping you find this very useful. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what I'm going to talk about, and then I'm going to dive right in. So basically, cognitive therapy for insomnia covers all these different points that you see here on my screen. You know, there's understanding sleep. So I'm going to go through some basics of sleep, you know, sleep cycles and what leads to a good quality sleep versus just quantity sleep. We're going to talk about sleep hygiene. Those are the tips that, you know, if you go online and look for a list of tips, you know, when to go to bed, when to eat before bed or not eat before bed, just the good habits. So we're going to review some of the basic good habits with sleep and that help us sleep. And for some of you, that might be all that you need. And then stimulus control is another technique where, you know, most of us with insomnia at some point start to toss and turn, and we can fall asleep on the couch, we can fall asleep on the floor, we can fall asleep in a chair, almost anywhere but bed. So as soon as we climb into bed, boing, we wake right up, and it's because we develop a conditioned response to the bed, or our body learns to associate the bed with tossing and turning. So as soon as you climb into bed, you kind of wake up again. And so what we need to do is change this conditioned response. So stimulus control is a fancy way of saying that you're going to break that habit and learn how to associate sleep with your bed rather than restlessness and tossing and turning. And then sleep restriction is the one I pull out when people really have a lot of trouble. If the others don't work, after you keep a sleep diary for about 2 weeks, I'll show you how to do one of those. What you do is you actually kind of induce sleepiness. You don't go to bed until you're very, very tired. You know, maybe you restrict, you know, you go to bed at 2 a.m. You know, usually most of us who have insomnia, we think, oh, well, I'm really tired, I should go to bed earlier. And it's actually the wrong thing to do when you're trying to train your body to fall asleep in your bed instead of, you know, taking cat naps here and there. So that one's a little painful, but it really works. So I'll try and build your motivation up for it so you're psyched for it. Or if you're having trouble with it, that might be when you want to see a psychologist who helps you with sleep problems and get on track with that. You know, every time I taught a sleep group and I brought up sleep restriction, everybody would kind of groan and go, oh no, you know, I'm gonna be so tired. You're actually not getting any less sleep than you would normally, but you know, in the long run, you do start to get a restful sleep and you condense your sleep into one discrete block of sleep rather than taking little cat naps here and there, and that's better for you as well. Then we're going to cover some basics on meditation and relaxation. I won't demonstrate those in this video. I'll do separate videos for both of those. I'm going to do an entire meditation class, or it may be up there already if you're viewing this later, but we'll cover that. And then thoughts that interfere with sleep. We're going to cover some of the sleep-related thoughts that interfere with sleep, but if you're having a lot of anxiety, that will also be covered in the Quieting Your Mind class. And where we go, that'll be a 6-part class that covers a lot of those different techniques. So let's jump in. So with understanding your sleep, basically there are 4 sleep stages, and there used to be 5. There used to be N1, N2, N3, and N4, but they condensed 3 and 4 back into 1. So we have 4 discrete stages. So N stands for non-REM sleep, and then we have REM sleep where we're dreaming. And we cycle through these stages throughout the night. And basically, this is how we distinguish between quantity and quality. So I'm just going to zip this out here, and I'll sort of draw this for you. So say we've got, the sleep stages here on this axis. So we've got N1, N2, N3. So N3 is your deeper stage of sleep. And then we've got REM sleep here. And then this is time overnight. So let's say this is 10 p.m., 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m., and 7 a.m. We'll stop there. And so what happens over the course of the night, and here's awake. We'll put awake up here. Oops. Spell and talk at the same time. So what happens as we start to fall asleep is we cycle through these stages throughout the night, and then we go into REM, and then we wake up briefly over the course of the night. Forgive me if this isn't perfect, but this is kind of what it looks like over the course of the night as we cycle in and out of the sleep stages. Okay, so what happens over the course of the night is you'll see, I'll change color on my pen here, that each of these is a sleep cycle, right? Or maybe I'll draw a circle here. So this is one sleep cycle here, one sleep cycle here, and another sleep cycle here. And each of those sleep cycles we generally go through, they're about 90 minutes long, and we cycle through several of them throughout the night. Gradually towards the end of the evening, we spend more time in REM sleep. And so that's why I remember dreams when we wake up and not so much in the middle of the night too. And then in between, people are often surprised to find that we actually wake up in between. After the REM cycle, we wake up before we go back into stage 1 sleep again. What happens often is that when we wake up, it's so quick we don't even remember, and or we will, if we have to go to the washroom or we have some pain. It's not the pain often that wakes us up; it's the fact that we just happen to have woken up, and then we remember waking up because there's something that makes us get up out of bed, like to go to the washroom. And as long as we're falling asleep within about 20 minutes again, that's not really considered disrupted sleep. That's still okay. So most people wake up, it surprises people with insomnia, between 5 to 12 times in the night. Most of those times we don't remember. They're kind of micro awakenings, but it's not a big deal if you are waking up a little bit. Waking up in the middle of the night is more of a problem when you can't get back to sleep. So if it's taking you more than half an hour, or you're up for the rest of the night, then we would say you have trouble with wakenings in the middle of the night, or early morning wakenings where you can't get back to sleep. So when we talk about sleep quality, what we want to see are these nice sleep cycles all lined up, where you get a number of sleep cycles over the course of the night. And sometimes, for example, we won't necessarily get great quality sleep if we are a bit sleep deprived. We wake up, we don't get all of our sleep cycles, or if some medications will interfere with our sleep cycles. So even some of the medications that we take for sleep, that's why, if some people take antihistamines or anti-nausea medications to help them sleep, I'm trying not to use trade names while I do this, but say you use an anti-nausea medication to go to sleep. Some of those will actually interfere with your sleep cycles, so that what happens is, instead of getting, the deeper stages of sleep, you're staying in the lighter stages of sleep, or you're not in them as long. This is my terrible drawing while I talk. So, that's essentially what even though you might get a lot of sleep quantity, you might not be getting great quality of sleep. And there's certain medications that interfere. If you've gone to your doctor for some sleep medications, they might prescribe some sleep medications that clear out of your system quite quickly. So if you have trouble falling asleep, medications like Imivane, for example, are fairly short acting, and then they clear your system, so you still get some good quality sleep near the end. Although one physician friend of mine told me it still kind of interferes a little bit, so he won't take it himself. So ideally, if you can learn how to fall asleep naturally, you have less interference with your sleep cycles. Just erase that here. Okay, I'm drawing while we talk here on my computer, which you can't see. So really, we're going to go with cognitive therapy for sleep. What we're really shooting for is good quality sleep, and teaching your body how to fall asleep naturally, so you do get that better quality sleep and stay asleep and have your sleep in solid blocks of time. So rather than having lots of naps throughout the day and catching up on your sleep when you can, you're getting all of your sleep at nighttime, which is more restful and better quality. So, there's a lot of people who worry about sleep deprivation and, the effects on our bodies, and we try and cope with it by drinking lots of coffee and other things to keep us propped up throughout the day. So I'm just going to talk very quickly about some of the effects of sleep deprivation. We can cope with, short periods of sleep deprivation. Certainly when we do the sleep restriction, what happens is we're inducing sort of quite a bit of sleep deprivation temporarily, so that your body learn to fall asleep as soon as your head hits the pillow, and then gradually you learn to fall asleep without needing to have sleep deprivation. But what happens is, we know there's different studies. I'm sure you've seen them in the media, and you can do more research on your own if you're really interested. But we see people who have trouble sleeping have a harder time with their weight. They're more prone to diabetes, high blood pressure or hypertension. There's an interesting study that came out not too long ago, where they basically did a sleep intervention with a group of children who had been diagnosed with attention deficit disorder. And when they found that they improved the children's sleep, their symptoms also improved, and quite a few of them didn't meet criteria for ADHD anymore. I certainly don't think that's the case for all kids with ADHD. I do think that it still exists, but certainly you can kind of temporarily induce some of those symptoms that look like ADHD if you're having trouble sleeping. And then mood disorders, if you're feeling kind of low key and not energetic and you have to drag yourself through your day, it certainly leads to emotional exhaustion as well as physical exhaustion. And plus, when you say it can be a chicken and egg thing too. If you do have trouble with depression, generally you also have trouble with sleep as well. So you want to treat both of those. And anxiety people usually have trouble falling asleep because they can't quiet their minds. And with depression, the pattern is often waking up too early in the morning, and then you can't get back to sleep. So we want to treat those sleep problems because they certainly make the depression and anxiety much harder to bear. And we want you to be rested and have the energy that you need to get better. And then we know that sleep problems can also lead to some problems with memory, word finding difficulties, and trouble concentrating as well. So that can be frustrating and get us down. So there's lots of reasons to work on this. In the short term, there's no reason to panic, but we do want to develop those habits that in the long term are going to help us be healthy and happy and want to fall asleep right away. So now let's start with the first set of strategies. Some of you may have be familiar with them already. Certain sleep hygiene techniques, or these are good sleep habits that we want to have. And we want to limit the amount of caffeine that we take in during the day. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with where this has been the one thing, that they've had to do because they're sensitive to caffeine. So some of us who are really sensitive to caffeine have to watch, if I have coffee maybe after 6 p.m., does it interfere with my sleep? I used to kind of restrict my coffee till, before 2 p.m. And actually I find now that that's even a bit too much for me. So I'll have my morning coffee, but after that, I sort of stick to decaf or herbal teas in the afternoon, just because I can't do it, whereas there's people I know who could drink a cup of coffee before they go to bed and fall asleep. I'm not one of those people. And so you want to see if you're not one of those people too. If you do have to limit your caffeine, and even like 1 or 2 cups in a day, or depending on where you get it, different coffees are different strengths. And there's one very strong common coffee I really like. I try not to say trade names, but I'm sure everyone can guess. And there's a surprising amount of caffeine. There's almost the equivalent of 6 cups worth of caffeine in 1 cup of this establishment's coffee. So, at least if you get the larger ones. And so when you do go to a place where the coffee may be stronger, it's actually a better idea to order an Americano, which has a regular amount of caffeine. It's 1 shot of espresso actually has, in a full cup of hot water, will have less caffeine than the drip coffee in some places. So that can be a better choice if you want a little bit of caffeine. And then if you do go off caffeine, if you decide you want to come off of it, then what you have to do is gradually go down, or you can get those caffeine headaches. For those of us who have a bit of an addiction problem with caffeine, we'll get headaches after if we stop too quickly. So you can either have half decafs or just smaller cups of coffee, but gradually weaning yourself down so it's not a big shift to your body. You have to go slow and see if that improves. And all of these things, I want you to treat them as an experiment too. I'm not saying you have to do this or you have to do that, but experiment and see, how much better you feel when you get enough sleep, and if those are the things that you need to do. If you can fall asleep, doing any of the bad habits that I'm listing here, then go ahead. This is really, what are the things that trigger insomnia in you? And you can experiment and see what works. And I pretty much have to do all of them because I am a terrible sleeper, and hopefully some of you won't have to do all of them like me, but I do. So if that makes you feel any better, I practice what I preach. And I'm not a perfect sleeper, but I'm much better than I would be if I didn't do these things. So the next thing that we're going to talk about now, it surprises quite a few people, is just the impact that bright lights have on our ability to fall asleep. So for watching TV, that bright screen is on our eyes, looking at our computer screens, even reading tablet computers, and so and bright lights, even if you're reading a book, if you have quite a lot of illumination in the room. So just all the artificial lighting that we have in our houses now in the evenings can be a problem, because they trick our brain into thinking that it's daytime, and it interferes with our ability to produce a hormone called melatonin, which you can also buy over the counter. Some people are familiar with it that way, but it's something that our body naturally produces. So as it gets darker, we start to get sleepy. And when we interfere with that by looking at a bright screen and tricking our brain into thinking it's daytime, we won't get as sleepy. So what I'll do is, I'll if you need to turn off the TV an hour or two before you go to bed, so that you give your body a chance to wind down. If I'm looking at a computer screen, if I have a little bit of work to do, then I'll dim my screen as much as possible, but it's still fairly bright. Even an iPod or an iPhone has a bright enough screen. Sometimes what I'll do, I have an Apple fan, so I have an iPad and an iPhone, and I've got the Kindle app on my phone, and I'll reverse it so that the screen is black and the text is white, and then I can read a little bit without it being too bright on my eyes. We basically want to keep the lights dimmer, and you'll find you'll get sleepier. It actually works for kids too. We left the lights off one evening. It was Earth Day, and when you leave the lights off for the evening and just let things get dark naturally, and my kids were both going, "Oh, I'm sleepy." And we never really hear that. So it can be a good practice to let the lights go dim and let your body have a chance to sort of wind down and get tired. So that can be a really big thing for a lot of people. I find that tip in general can be the trick for a number of people who are, just constantly overstimulating their bodies with the extra light in the evening. So you can experiment with that and see if that works for you. Lots of us know not to look at the clock when we're trying to fall asleep. What happens too, we look at the clock and go, okay, I've got 5 more hours to sleep. I've got 4 more hours to sleep. I've got 3 more hours to sleep. And we'll talk a little bit about this near the end with the thoughts about sleep or the worries about sleep. But generally, turning your alarm clock around. And actually, even if you have a very bright alarm clock, that can be enough light in the room to keep you up. Oh, I should say another thing about lights too. Sometimes it can be a good idea. You don't want to flip on lights if you have to go to the washroom in the middle of the night. So if you need a little bit of light, put some dim light nights around so you can at least navigate with no light. It's actually a trick for babies too. If you want your babies to go back to sleep, they wake up when they're really newborns, and you want to just sort of quietly get them up, give them their feeding. It's quiet. It's dark, you don't do a lot of talking, you keep it dark and calm, and then you have an easier time getting the baby back to bed. I found even with my kids, I couldn't even turn on the TV with them. That would wake them up enough. There was enough light. But getting back to the clock, you don't want to look at the clock while you're trying to fall asleep. You're going to get the sleep that you're going to get, and keeping track of the clock isn't going to help you. And then the next thing is to exercise. 100 years ago, I don't think there were probably as many sleep problems. We were more active. We weren't spending an hour a day commuting in our cars and working at a desk and not getting that physical activity that we need. But you need to kind of tire yourself out. But you don't want to exercise too late before you go to bed, because that'll warm your body up, rev you up a bit, and make it harder to fall asleep. So if you do have to exercise in the evening, try and make it early evening, preferably 3 hours before you go to bed. Some people will say that it's even better to exercise in the morning, and that helps wake you up and get you going for the day and help set your sleep schedule a little bit better. And then some of us will have a nightcap to try and make ourselves feel sleepy. Actually, alcohol interferes with sleep quality. It's one of those things, and we tend to wake up more in the middle of the night as our bodies clear the alcohol from our systems, and we don't get good quality sleep because of that. We'll stay in the lighter stages of sleep. So best not to have a drink before bed. Just the same rule of thumb with driving. If you have a drink, you want to wait a while before you would get into the car so that your blood alcohol levels back down to 0. Same thing with sleep. So if you want a glass of wine with dinner early in the evening, then that's probably okay. You can see for yourself. Some of us process it more slowly, but generally speaking, having a drink before bed is going to interfere with your sleep, not help your sleep. And sometimes people will get up and have a cigarette or go for a smoke thinking that it'll relax them. But of course that nicotine is stimulating, and a lot of the other things in cigarettes are stimulating, and probably shouldn't be smoking. Maybe I should do a smoking cessation video and help you there. But you do want to try and limit the amount that you smoke in the evening, because that'll make it harder to wind down. And certainly if you wake up in the middle of the night and you do want to try and get back to sleep, you're not up for the rest of the day, you don't want to be smoking then, because it'll make it harder to fall back asleep. And then the other trick is to always have a regular wake up time, that you make sure that no matter what, you don't sleep in, you're not napping during the day, and you wake up at the same time every morning. And that includes weekends. Sorry, those of us who are bad sleepers, we look forward to when we can sleep in, but it's not a good idea. You want to set your body clock so that it knows when to go to sleep and when to wake up, and so you won't need to sleep in. Hopefully you'll be up and ready to go and enjoy your whole weekend. Okay, now stimulus control is beyond the bad habits. So if any of those habits you find really do the trick, then great, stop there. But if you need to do more than that, then we're going to go into phase 2. So phase 2 is the stimulus control, and what we're trying to do is teach your body how to feel sleepy when you get into the bedroom. Too many of us with insomnia, we spend so much time tossing and turning that we just start to even get nervous at the thought of going to bed. or if we climb into bed, we may be sleepy when we climb into bed, but then we kind of wake up and think, oh God, I've got to fall asleep now. And it's not going to happen, and I'm probably going to toss and turn. So we want to break that pattern. We want to teach your body that the bed is where we sleep. And if we do too many other things in bed, then our bodies kind of associate the bed with wakefulness. It's kind of like the same thing. We have all kinds of little conditioned response. If you always eat a snack in front of the television, and say you go on a diet and you want to, lose a little bit of weight, and so you decide no more snacks. Well, you might not be hungry, but as soon as you sit down in front of the TV without your snack, you're going to crave one because your body has a conditioned response. Oh, when I sit in front of the TV, I eat. Same thing with smoking too. A lot of people find that they can get over the physical dependence, but there's certain things that will trigger their cravings for a cigarette. So if you say have a glass of wine or beer, and suddenly you weren't craving a cigarette, but as soon as you have that glass of wine, you want a cigarette to go with it, because there's an association that your body's made, or there's a connection that your body's made, that when I have this, I also have this. And so the trouble with insomnia sometimes is your body starts to associate, when I get into bed, that's when I get anxious and toss and turn. So we have to turn that around. And how you do that basically is you don't spend any time in bed tossing and turning. If you can't fall asleep, then you start with your bedtime routine basically, and do all the good habits that we talked about before, and you only go to bed when sleepy. So usually when we're tired, we think we should go to bed earlier. That's not the thing to do. You kind of want to be falling over, exhausted, tired, so that you have a better chance of crashing. And then your body's going to learn, oh, when I go into bed, it feels so good, I just crash. It's awesome. And so we only go to bed when we're sleepy. And then so if 10 o'clock comes and you're not sleepy, and that's your bedtime in your mind, don't go to bed. Wait till 10:30 and see. So say you go to bed and you find you can't fall asleep within 20 or 30 minutes. And again, you're not looking at the clock, so you're guessing. So you just know you're not going to fall asleep. So then what you want to do is get up out of bed and do something boring. It's not the time to start cleaning or doing chores. You don't want to turn on a lot of lights. So you want to do something that's not too stimulating. Generally what I'll do is I'll often listen to podcasts or audiobooks so that I don't have to read. The trouble is, if it's an interesting book, then you want to stay up all night and read it. So you have to be careful with that. So you don't want to do something that you're going to get into too much either. Maybe listen to a boring audiobook. Or a lot of times I'll just meditate, which we'll talk about a little bit later, which is also good for your sleep. But that's generally one of the things I'll do, but nothing too stimulating. If your bills are going to stress you out, that's not the time to do your bills. The one exception is if you happen to be worrying about something, then you can do some of the anxiety activities that will be demonstrated in the quieting your mind during the day exercise or class that I'm going to teach with Teo de Gagne. So once you're doing that boring thing for a while and you feel yourself get sleepy, that's when you go back to bed. And you repeat that as required. So if you get back to bed and you wake up again and you're not going to get to sleep, then you get back out of bed. The goal is to not really spend any time in bed awake. Your time in bed should be falling asleep or asleep. And if you can't get to sleep, you want to get out of bed, so you break that association between your bed and tossing and turning. Now, stimulus control also means that you do nothing in your bedroom except you sleep and have sex, unless you're under 18 and you're living with your parents. You can take that up with them. But basically, this is the line that we use a lot in cognitive therapy for insomnia, is that sleep and sex are the only things allowed in the bedroom. And then you want to take out the TV. No one likes when I say that. But, the TV's a bright light. It's going to keep you up, and you don't want that stimulation in the bed. And if you sit in bed watching movies, then you associate a waking during the day activity with being in bed, and your body doesn't learn that when it sees the bed. We want your body to, when you see the bed, start to feel tired and sleepy and want to crawl in it and go to bed. And if you do other things, if you're hanging out in bed, if you're reading in bed, I know everyone gets mad when I say stop reading in bed, but if you can read in bed and fall asleep, then it's not a problem. But if you're not a good sleeper, then you need to experiment with this and see if you stop reading in bed, you stop watching TV in bed, you stop doing work in bed. You know, some of us will have a desk in our bedrooms and we'll do work in there, and that's not a good thing. Or when I was a student, I lived in a studio apartment, so I only had one room. And so what I did then was I kind of got creative, and I basically, let me see if I can show you kind of what I did. Oh, that's not what I want here. Let's make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so say this was my studio apartment. And I'll actually do this with people too, you know, who are living in one-bedroom apartments or you know, small spaces where they don't have a lot of room to map it out. And we'll actually map out how to lay out your bedroom. But when I was a student, I had my bed here, and then I put a screen here to kind of block it off, just, you know, a divider, room divider screen. And then I had my couch here, and I had the TV here, and I had a kitchen table here, and then closets were here, and then I had a desk here. So I couldn't even see my desk where, you know, there's my computer and my chair. So I couldn't even really see from my bed where I could kind of see the TV, but, you know, I could kind of block it out too. But I did kind of divide my living space and my sleeping space. So you can kind of get creative with that, you know, either by hanging curtains, room dividers, or just, you know, physically turning. Like if you do have a desk in your room, then you want to, when you're working at your desk, have your back turned to your bed so you're not looking at your bed. You don't feel like you're in your bedroom. If that makes any sense. So you can play around with that and, you know, get creative. A lot of times if you're a teenager and you do a lot of homework in your room because it's a quiet part of the house, you know, sometimes we get creative with that when I work with teens and, you know, spend more time at the library or finding somewhere outside of the house that might be quieter to do some of your homework, and then or trying to find a space within the house somewhere else where you can do your studying. And then the and no naps as well. There's lots of reasons for no naps. When we look at sort of the bottom of the screen here, you want the same wake up time every day and no naps. One of the reasons for no naps is it kind of interferes with our ability to get sleepy at night. So we want to build up something called sleep pressure. And the longer we're awake, the more sleep pressure we have. So there's more sleep pressure if we've been up 15 hours versus 12 hours. We're just going to be sleepier, and it's going to be that much easier to kind of fall asleep when we want to go to sleep and teach our bodies that we want to fall asleep in the bed. Now, this is kind of true. There's something a lot of teens have, though. It's called phase delay. And what can happen is the more sleep pressure you have, the harder it can be for some teens to fall asleep. So if you kind of miss your window, depending on when you get up and how long you've been up, some teens, you know, will find they'll feel sleepy before 9 o'clock, but then they can't fall asleep. But if they miss that window, if they're not in sleep by 9, they can't sleep until about, you know, 11 or 12. So just know that, you know, that sometimes you have to work around. That'll be harder too, but you don't want to go to bed when you're not tired, because then you're going to develop this, possibly you're going to develop this anxiety around trying to fall asleep. So there we go. All right. So the next thing here, I see I have a typo in my thing. It's not sleep restriction, it's sleep restriction. So basically you're restricting your time in bed. So this is the next step, you know, sort of the good sleep habits and the stimulus control. You don't stay in bed when you're not sleepy. If we have to go to the next step, then we have to do some sleep restriction. And usually what I do is I have people keep a sleep diary for a couple of weeks and calculate their average amount of sleep that they get throughout the day, 24-hour period, including naps if you're napping. And you want to divide that to get the average amount of time that you spend in bed. Or you calculate your average sleep and then the amount of time that you spend in bed, your total sleep time in bed, and you divide the average. I'll show you. better to just show you. We'll do some examples. And then what you do is you pick a new bedtime. So if you're getting on average 6 hours of sleep a night, then you basically, and you want to get up at 7, you don't go to bed until 1 a.m. and get up at 7. So you're going to be tired, and you do that for a week. And then if you can do that, if you're falling asleep around 1 a.m., then you move your sleep time back a half an hour, and you go to bed at 12:30, and then the next week at 12, and then the next week. So as long as you're falling asleep and something called your sleep efficiency score is good, you can keep going. So let's do this. The one thing is your bedtime may change a bit, but your wake up time always stays the same, including on weekends. So let me grab this here, make the screen a bit bigger, a nice white canvas, erase that. Ooh, my brush is big here. Okay, so what happens here with sleep restriction is, say each night we've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and you're going to do this for 2 weeks usually to get your starting times to pick your so you're not really changing anything at this point, you're just keeping track of what you're doing. And so then you put there's the time you go into bed, and then the time you fall asleep, and then the time you wake up, and the time out of bed. So what happened here, actually, I often use more of a spreadsheet to kind of do this, because you can see if you're napping and you're getting in and out of bed. We're just going to look at totals here. So, say you go to bed at 10 p.m., but you don't fall asleep until 11:30, and then you wake up at, let's say, 3:30, but you don't get out of bed until 7 a.m. Okay, so what we have here is, from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., you've got 9 hours. So your total time in bed, call this time in bed, is 9 hours. But your total sleep time, TST, total sleep time, is actually 4 hours. Okay, and then you do that for the night, and you can do it over a 24-hour period. So if you lay down at 1 p.m. and you fall asleep at 1:30, and then get up at 2:30 and get out of bed at or off the couch. It counts if it's on the couch. You can't not count it if it's not on the couch. So what you do is you keep track of the total time you spend laying down in bed and the total time that you're actually asleep in bed. And so those numbers will be different. So let's say, over the course of the week, you've got 10, but you slept 6. And here you've got 8, but you slept 7. And here you've got 14, and you slept 12. And here you slept, you're in bed 6, but you only slept 2. And what we do is we add those totals up. And just getting my calculator here. So, because I'm not going to do math in my head while I'm recording something. So add up those totals. So we have 47 hours total here for the total time in bed. So this is time in bed. So time in bed, sleeping and not sleeping combined. Okay. And then we add the total sleep time up. And we have 31. So that's the amount of time that we slept. And then we're going to divide that, I guess that's 5 nights I've got here. So 31 divided by 5, is 6.2 hours of sleep a night on average. And 47 divided by 5 is 9.4 hours spent in bed on average a night. So then what we do is we take that 6.2 over 9.4, and we're dividing our total sleep time by our total time in bed. and that, is that right? 6.2 divided by, yep, so our sleep efficiency, that would be 66%, okay? So what we're actually shooting for is anything above 80% is good. So as long as you get an 80% sleep efficiency score, you're spending, 80% of your time in bed is spent actually sleeping, then you can increase your time the next week when we do the sleep restriction. Okay, so then we have to pick a wake up time and a fall asleep time. So in this case, this person needs to be out of bed at 7 a.m. So the new bedtime will be, instead of 10 p.m. here, the new bedtime is going to be 1 a.m. So especially when I do this with teenagers, I usually bring parents in. It's like, really, I told your kid to go to bed at 1 a.m. temporarily, and to induce that sleepiness. And then you wake up at 7 a.m. weekends, all the time. So you depend on, when's the earliest that you need to get, or when do you need to get up to go to work or go to school, and that you pick that time, and that's your wake up time. So if you're staying up till 1 a.m., you're going to be sleepy. A lot of people panic. I'm not actually asking you to sleep less than you're already sleeping, but what you're doing is you're sleeping the same average amount of time every night, but we're trying to condense it into one block so that you get that better quality sleep. And plus, you're also teaching your body to feel sleepy when you see your bed. And what happens is you gradually get to increase that time. And so it can be a little bit painful. It's kind of like when it's sort of like inducing jet lag. When you travel and you go from Los Angeles to Paris, you're not going to go to bed at the same time that you would in Los Angeles. You're going to stay up with the Parisians and feel sleepy and have that jet lag for a few days until your body adjusts, and then you'll have a new sleep time. And that's kind of what we're doing here, so that you keep the same hours as everybody else. Those of us with insomnia, we have a tendency to be night owls and be up all night, and so we need to teach our bodies to keep the same hours as everyone around us, unless we have really flexible jobs and lives, kind of like when I was a student. I could get away with a little bit more of that, but if you do have a regular kind of job, or you're going to school during the day, then you're going to need to try and adjust your sleep schedule so that you keep hours with everybody else. So what happens is, what we're doing in the first week of the sleep restriction is we're trying to get your sleep efficiency score actually closer to 100%, rather than even 80 or 66. And we do that by, you go to bed at 1 a.m. and you keep a sleep diary. So here's your new sleep diary. So you go to bed, your time in bed is, now 1 a.m. and you fall asleep in 10 minutes, and you wake up at 7 a.m. Probably, the alarm will wake you up for a lot of us. Actually, and waking up, having the alarm wake you up is a sign of sleep deprivation. So if you don't wake up before your alarm every morning, that probably means you're not getting enough sleep. And actually, falling asleep too quickly is a sign of sleep deprivation. It's not a good thing to fall asleep as soon as your head hits the pillow, except when we're doing sleep restriction, because we're doing it on purpose. But if you are falling asleep as soon as your head hits the pillow, it means that you're actually sleep deprived. It should take most of us who are getting enough rest about 20 minutes to fall asleep. So that's a sign. If it takes 20 minutes to fall asleep and you're waking up and stirring before your alarm goes off, you're getting enough sleep. So that's kind of a cue too. And then your time out of bed will be 7 a.m. because as soon as you wake up, you're out of bed. So even though you're not getting more sleep, your sleep efficiency score is now 100%. So if you keep that up for the week, or anything over 80%, then you can increase your time. So the next week, say this is the next week, then your new bedtime will be 12:30 a.m. and so on. And then the next week, midnight, and then 11:30, and then 11. Okay. Some people, will do this for a whole week. So you keep with one bedtime for a whole week. You can play it by ear. If you're falling asleep consistently, 3 or 4 days, You want to try and go to bed a half hour earlier, experiment with that. But if your sleep efficiency score starts to go back down again, then you have to adjust and do the sleep restriction again. So hopefully that makes sense. The kind of abbreviated version of all this, I mean, this is a lot of detail. Some of us need to do this. The abbreviated version is you pick your wake up time. So it could be 7 or 6 or whatever, but you pick your wake up time, and then you don't go to bed until you're sleepy and until you think you can fall asleep. So that's the abbreviated version if you don't want to do all the daily tracking and the diary. The one thing is you want to spend at least 4 to 5 hours horizontal. That's kind of important. So you want to be laying. Your body kind of does need that rest. So if your sleep restrictions say you're getting less than 4 hours of sleep on average here, if that's your total sleep time, you want to be spending that time in bed. So you don't want to go lower than that, if that makes sense. So if your bedtime is, or your wake up time is 7 a.m., you're not really going to go to bed later than 3 a.m. Okay. Even say if your average was 3.3, you would still maintain at least 4 hours, preferably 5, for your bedtime. Okay. All right. Clear this. So it's a bit confusing. There's some good books that cover this very well too. There's the Insomnia workbook is very good. You can find that on Amazon, and I'll also put a list of different books that I like along with the video, so you can see the resources that you can look into. So that's basically sleep restriction. It's the most painful of the techniques, but it really does work like a charm. I have to say that each time I've taught an insomnia group, and I've done many, everyone kind of groans at the beginning when we talk about sleep restriction and start working on that every week. But when I ask at the end of the class what was most helpful, everyone always tells me it's the sleep restriction. That's the main thing that can keep us on track. So a little bit painful. If you do have trouble with it, or you have thoughts that kind of, I don't want to do this, it's pain, a good cognitive therapist should be able to help you with that, so that you can wrap your head around it and feel comfortable that this really is an important thing to do, that in the long run, it's definitely short-term pain for long-term gain. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to cover are just different intrusive thoughts that keep us up at night. No matter what we try and do, our brains keep chattering. We often think it's us that are doing the thinking, and really it's our brains that are doing the thinking. One way that I kind of explain this is when if you're wearing, say, a ring, you take that ring off your finger, or a watch. I don't wear a watch anymore, but when you're doing that, what happens is the part of the brain that feels the ring is always getting that signal, and it gets kind of used to it. So if you take the ring off, you might not feel the ring when it's on, except now I'm talking about it, so if you're wearing a ring, you're probably feeling it now. But when you take the ring off, the part of the brain that was receiving the signal from your finger goes, well, where's the ring? Where's the ring? Where's the ring? And you feel it. You feel that it's missing, even though there's nothing sending a signal to your brain from your hand. But we get that sensation that something's missing, and that's what happens when part of our body's stimulated over time. Or some of you may have heard of phantom limb pain. And what happens with phantom limb pain is you lose an arm, you lose a hand or a finger or a foot, and people will have the sensation that the limb is still there, even though that there's nothing there sending a signal anymore. And often, the part of the brain that was responsible for feeling that limb or that digit will go, where's the arm, where's the arm, where's the arm, where's the arm? And it compensates, it creates the signal itself. So we're actually feeling that sensation, but it's literally in our head. It's the brain creating that sensation. We now know that this is pretty recognized phenomena, and and sometimes it really can go overboard and even be painful or really bother us. Like even taking the ring off, it can really bug you not to have that ring there. And even though we didn't really feel it when it was on. And it's kind of the same thing with words. When we're bombarded with language, we're always talking or listening to somebody else talk or watching TV. Even when we're reading, we're hearing the words in the head. And so when at nighttime, when it's quiet, the language centers in the brain don't shut up. they keep talking. So we think we're doing the talking, but it's often that brain, because we can't stop the talking. I can't stop the talking. It's going to be there. I mean, I talk all day. Maybe if I lived up on a mountaintop and meditated all day for 20 years, my brain might get quiet. I'm not sure. But right now, that's not going to happen. I talk a lot with work and, with my family. And so I'm going to hear that chatter at night. And so you have to find a way to direct your thoughts in a way that's going to help you unwind, feel calmer, and not get so frustrated when you hear that chatter in your brain. So what we're going to do, the different kinds of anxious thoughts that you can have, and we're only going to cover one of them in this talk because I'm going to cover the other two in a separate class that you can watch, is or what if kinds of thoughts. So if you have a lot of what ifs and they're kind of, I don't know if they'll happen, but what if I lose my job? What if I get sick? What if I get cancer? What if something bad happens to the kids? And we imagine all these worst case scenarios, and it really gets loud at night, especially. And so that could be one kind of worry. And I'll talk about how to do that in another class. And then problems that need solving. So say you actually have a problem that you need to solve. There's different problem solving techniques or ways to come up with a plan, put it on paper and out of your mind. And I don't know, most of us when we worry at night, I'm certainly this way, when I wake up in the morning and go, why was I worrying about that? Like, some things, are concerns and they'll keep you up. But if they take on a life of their own. So sometimes actually like putting pen to paper and writing them down and doing some of the problem solving exercises that I'll describe in another class can help a lot with coping with those fears. And instead of just letting them run through your head throughout the night. And the thoughts though that we are going to talk about are different beliefs or worries that a lot of us have about sleep that can frustrate us and make us think that a night of insomnia is worse than it actually is. So when we talk about more sleep-related anxiety or anxious thoughts, here's some of the myths that are very common to people who have insomnia. So these are thoughts that people with insomnia tend to have that people without insomnia don't have. So one is, I can't function on less than 8 hours of sleep. While it's not ideal, most of us can function on less than 8 hours of sleep. And, really there are times when just the sleepiness that we feel if we haven't had a good night's sleep the night before will ebb and flow throughout the day. So there'll be periods of time, if you actually pay attention, where you're not feeling that bad. You feel okay and you can actually get quite a bit done. And times where you will feel sleepy, but it's uncomfortable but not harmful. There might be times where you don't want to drive something because you're too sleepy. You feel like you could fall asleep. And one example is one time I could not sleep at all. I was up all night and not 1 minute of sleep. And that doesn't happen to me too often, but it can happen. And I went to work the next day and chatted with my husband at lunchtime, and he said, "Oh, how are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, fine." And he said, "Because you didn't sleep last night." And I'm like, "Oh, right, I forgot." So I thought it was funny that I didn't even think of it at the time. I wasn't feeling that sleepy, but by the end of the day I did, and I didn't drive myself home just to be a little bit safe. So making other arrangements. You can take transit, have someone pick you up, take a cab if you really feel like you're too tired to drive. But for the most part, most of us can function fairly well without sleep. It's unpleasant, not ideal, but certainly we're going to get through the day. And then the other kind of thought is I shouldn't wake up in the middle of the night, that this is wrong, there's something wrong with my sleep. So that's why at the beginning we spend a little bit of time talking about normal sleep, how it's actually normal to wake up several times, in fact, throughout the middle of the night, and that's not a big deal. It's only a problem if you can't get back to sleep for a long period of time. And that even just the idea that I'm a good sleeper if my head hits the pillow and I fall asleep, that's actually a sign of sleep deprivation and not a good thing. So that's another kind of misconception about sleep. Another one is if I'm tired, I should go to bed earlier and spend more time in bed. Now, you know that's not true after talking about stimulus control and sleep restriction. And then the other one, chronic insomnia, is going to harm me. Now, while there are consequences to sort of chronic sleep deprivation, one night of sleep is not going to be the end of the world. So you don't want to panic about that in the middle of the night. You know, remind yourself that you are doing what's required to get yourself back on track and get a good night's sleep, that there's lots of things that you can do. You know, you can start exercising earlier, limit your caffeine, get better sleep habits. You know, there's a lot of things that you can use in your arsenal to get yourself back on sleep. But in the short term, a bit of sleep deprivation isn't going to make you sick or die an earlier death and all of those things, right? So you don't want to panic about that at night. That's the message there. Another one here is I'll have to cancel all my plans. I won't be able to go ahead with my day. And you might need to make some adjustments, but I don't really cancel things if I don't sleep anymore. I used to really panic about that, and now not so much. And you do, when you actually experiment with it and you see, well, I can get through the day. You know, I prefer days when I do get enough sleep, but I don't have to cancel everything because I'm sleep deprived. Okay. And if I can't sleep, it will ruin my day is another one that, you know, it's just not good not to have that kind of sleep or to have a sleepless night because it'll be awful. It'll be terrible. You know, if I mention to people, oh, I didn't really sleep much last night, you know, my typical response I get from other people is, oh, that's awful. And I'm like, well, no, it's not. It's actually not. It's okay. So remembering that it's really not the end of the world. It's unpleasant, but not the end of the world. That, you know, most of us can cope with it by taking care of ourselves, and you know, and maybe want to change some of the activities. You know, sometimes if I'm having an off day, actually, it doesn't even matter if I'm sleep deprived or not. Some days I'm just more distracted, or, you know, not into something. So I'll pick, you know, some of the easier things that I have to get done that day. You know, that require maybe a little bit less concentration. So I'll make adjustments, but, you know, certainly not the entire day is shot. Okay. And then you can think if you've had a poor night's sleep, you'll be really tired the next night and you'll be able to fall asleep. You know, that's what a lot of people find after a CBT for insomnia program, a cognitive behavioral therapy program for insomnia, is that, you know, you may have one sleepless night, but it's much less likely you're going to have two sleepless nights in a row, because you're going to let yourself get sleep deprived and get yourself back on track the next night. You actually kind of want that sleep deprivation, because that is what gets you back on track. Okay, so on to the next part. So this is the nice relaxing part. I'm going to do separate videos for each of these, sort of relaxation and mindfulness-based stress reduction, so you can look at those. But there's certainly good things to practice when you're trying to get a good night's sleep. You don't necessarily have to. They help you wind down. You can use them as wind down activities. We know that people who meditate do tend to sleep better if there's less stress in our lives. If we're not so busy, we tend to sleep a lot better too. So with relaxation and meditation, for both of these things, you know, especially for those of us who have really busy, active minds, you have to get comfortable with the fact that your mind's going to be busy and active, and it's not about making your mind go blank and not having thoughts drift through your mind. It's about refocusing again and again on the practice of the techniques, and they're not necessarily going to make you fall asleep. Like some nights you might be so wound up you can listen to a relaxation tape 10 times, and so it's not always a magic bullet, but the practice makes perfect. So the more you meditate, the more you practice relaxation, even when you don't need to. Say you're feeling okay, but you still practice it. It's good for you. It's good for your body. And you know, we're starting to see that one of the side effects of meditation in particular is better sleep, better time, an easier time falling asleep, more restful sleep. You know, there's different theories about that. You know, one is that people who, when you meditate, you actually go into a similar state that we do when we're falling asleep. So maybe meditators know how to put themselves to sleep a little bit better. Plus the meditation itself can be restful and wind us down. You know, if we're revved up, it's going to be harder to fall asleep. So there's a couple of different techniques. I'll demonstrate these all in different videos, but some of you may be familiar with some of them. All of them require some degree of practice. One is diaphragmatic breathing. Often people tell us to take a deep breath when we're feeling stressed. And that can be the wrong thing to do, because if we're taking those deep breaths too quickly, we can hyperventilate, and that actually kind of revs us up. So you want to take long, slow, deep breaths, and I'll demonstrate that technique later. And then progressive muscle relaxation, I think, is a good beginner's relaxation technique. That's when you tense and relax different muscles. And what happens is when you tense the different muscle groups in your forehead and your jaw and your neck, so you go through the body part by body part, tensing and relaxing those muscles gently, because you don't want to give yourself a muscle spasm, but just a gentle contraction. It makes it a little bit easier for your muscles to relax than if you just try and let go of the tension. And so that can be a good technique. There's lots of different recordings out there. I haven't found one relaxation tape, though, that everyone universally likes. Different people like different voices. So, what one person loves, someone else may not. And then imagery can be nice if you're a visual person and you want to imagine a beach scene or somewhere relaxing, someplace where you feel like you can unwind. It could be something that someplace you've been to many times, or something that you just make up and your utopian ideal of where you would love to hang out and be relaxed. And again, there's different guided imagery programs that you can look into as well. And then one thing that can be good is gentle yoga at night. It's kind of like the progressive muscle relaxation. Just helps you to stretch out and let go of some of that muscle tension if you're feeling very keyed up. Can be very helpful as well. You don't want to do power yoga or anything too. That's going to get just like exercise, right? You don't want to wind yourself up, but some gentle stretching can be a good thing. Another good way to unwind and relax too. And then mindfulness meditation in particular, we're seeing lots of benefits for sleep. There's lots of good home study programs for mindfulness. There's going to be an upcoming one here on Wired to Worry. We're going to do another multi-class meditation program. So it may be up already, depending on when you're watching this. But meditation can be quite helpful. And essentially mindfulness meditation, what it is in particular, is it's a kind of meditation where you're refocusing your attention again and again on something that you're trying to pay attention to, whether it's your breath and feel like physically feeling the breath move through your nose and windpipe and lungs, or whether you're focusing on an activity. Like one thing I like to do is contemplative art, so I'll do mindful art and do lots of drawing, and so my cartooning time is also my meditation time. So there's different ways to approach meditation. If you can look in your community and see if there's any good classes. So if you type in mindfulness meditation and the name of your city or town, see if there's anything happening there. There's lots of different classes. Certainly there's lots of books by John Kabat-Zinn and Sharon Salzberg, and a number of different meditation teachers. Your local library probably has quite a few of them. I know where I live, there's lots of mindfulness books here in the public library, so you can check that out. You can find a voice that you like, and lots of guided meditations to get you started. And then online, there is a podcast I really like called Zencast, and on it there is an intro to meditation class if you're interested in coming at it from a Buddhist perspective, but it is mindfulness. So I get lots of my patients who are unable to attend a class here in town just for convenience, or they don't have the time to have a listen to that as well. So zencast.org is a great resource for that as well. Love them. And so that can be also a good thing to take up a meditation practice, yoga practice, relaxation practice, something to keep you healthy and get rid of that muscle tension and be nice to yourself. And then there's sticking to it. So I threw a lot at you in this particular class. I covered a lot of material. I basically gave an overview of a program that generally I would spend 4 to 6 weeks working on with different people to get their sleep back on track. So take that in mind. There's a lot of information here to take in. So there's lots of great resources to learn how to meditate and relax. Lots of tapes and tapes. That's old language CDs or downloads you can get for different meditation things. If you can listen to the voice ahead of time, that can always be helpful, so that you get a sense of whether you like that person. Again, the library is a great place to look for a lot of these things, or previews on iTunes. And there's also free resources out there too, including there's going to be more and more added all the time to wiredtoworry.com, so you can keep checking back here if you want to keep looking for more resources, because I'll keep doing more of these videos as long as people like them. So, and then in terms of books that I really like, that I often recommend, certainly the Insomnia workbook by Stephanie Silverman is very good. And you can find that in your library or Amazon or Chapters if you're here in Canada. And Overcoming Insomnia by Jack Ettinger is a great book as well. And then Quiet Your Mind and Get to Sleep, Solutions for Insomnia by, I'm trying to remember her name, Colleen Manber. I think that's it. Let me look here. I've got it here. Colleen Carney, and that's a great book. That one in particular is kind of nice because not only does it cover basics of insomnia, but it's solutions for insomnia for those who have depression, anxiety, or chronic pain, and those are all conditions that tend to make us sleep less well. So it's kind of nice to have a book that acknowledges some of the extra struggles that we have. But again, CBT for insomnia we know works very well for people who have insomnia due to a medical condition, or as well as a mood disorder such as anxiety or depression. So you can still work on getting a better sleep even if there's something physical causing that pain. So I hope you enjoyed this class, and you'll come and reference it again and again as needed, and check out some of the resources. And if you find that you're still dragging yourself throughout your day and you're just having a harder time even with this information, getting a good night's sleep, and generally getting the rest that you need. And again, the goal isn't to become a perfect sleeper, it's to become a good enough sleeper, that you're getting the rest that you need. There's just some of us who from birth were never good sleepers. If you were a good sleeper before, then chances are, if you do these things, you'll get back on track. But if you've always been a terrible sleeper like me, then you might just be improving your sleep. So the goal is to basically, get the rest you need, but not worry about perfection. And also, I hope you have a better understanding of what a good night's sleep is. Often people are better sleepers than they think. When people come and see me in my office after keeping a sleep diary for a couple of weeks, and we look, they're actually getting more sleep than they think they are. So bear that in mind too. And that, sometimes it feels like we're not getting that rest, and we think we're not getting any sleep, but when we actually look at the data, we're better sleepers than we think a lot of the time. But if you're having trouble, by all means, it's really a good idea there's a lot that can be done for sleep, and a lot that cognitive psychologists and cognitive therapists can do to help you get a better night's sleep if they're familiar with treating insomnia. So take care and have a good night's sleep.